What's going on, Ambitious Vet? Welcome to the Ambitious Vet Show. I'm your host, Chris Hoffman. I'm a Marine Corps veteran who got out as a junior enlisted in 2012, went through 5 jobs in 5 different industries in just 5 years. And that was before I began to discover that the immediate transitional education expires when you desire more than just your basic needs being met. What do I mean by immediate transition education? Career readiness, interview prep, job fairs, all that stuff is just the first step towards you not only figuring out who the hell you are, but what you want and how to go and get it and live a fulfilled life post-military. And that is why this show exists, to dive into the trenches with today's top subject matter experts, share inspiring transition stories, and provide master classes to equip you with the realistic perspective on what it takes to not only survive, but thrive in the everyday trenches of life post-military. Ambitious Vet, are you ready to dive deeper inside of this brand, inside of the ecosystem that has been going on since 2017? We've been able to build one of the largest personal development communities in the United States that value personal development, right? Which is a huge thing that's up and coming inside the veteran community. But if you want to kind of dive a little bit deeper into our brand, kind of move closer to the ecosystem, maybe you're not ready to completely jump into our community learning platform quite yet, but maybe you just want to get a little bit deeper into the core updates of AVN. This is how you do it. Go visit ambitiousvetnetwork.com. Go there, subscribe to our newsletter. There you're going to get an immediate free copy of our 5x5 goal setting framework that has been responsible for veterans that have kind of learned the basics of SMART goals. You don't have to be too smart to learn how to do SMART goals. And you don't have to be too smart to realize that SMART goals aren't enough for you to think all the way through on how to actually execute your goals. So this 5x5 goal setting framework actually deepens what it takes to actually achieve SMART goals for you, and it just aligns with your natural thinking as an ambitious vet with tons of military experience. But also, once you get that and you're subscribed to our newsletter, you're going to get a bi-weekly newsletter that you're just going to get access to content, updates, news, and curated tools to fuel your post-military life ambitions. And I can tell you this right now, Ambitious Vet, there's a reason why we haven't pushed out an episode in about a month. It's because there is a lot of stuff we're working on the back end that I am excited to announce, and you will get insider first insights on upcoming updates and news around what's coming next within the Ambitious Vet Network if you are subscribed to that newsletter, right? We kind of see that as the line outside the door right before the smartphone gets released, right? If you are really an ambassador of this brand, you really like it, make sure you go and you subscribe to that newsletter, and we're excited to dive in more into the trenches with you. So go visit ambitiousvetnetwork.com, subscribe to that newsletter, and we look forward to keeping you updated.
It's time to get into the trenches, dig into your purpose, and fire up your life's fulfillment. The Ambitious Vet Podcast starts now.
What's going on, Ambitious Vet? We are right back inside the trenches again this week with Christopher R. Pavlak. Chris Pavlak graduated from law school in 2006. He failed the bar exam twice before joining the U.S. Marines and becoming a ground intelligence officer. During his service, Chris has led Marine Rifle and Scout Sniper platoons, been a planner for Marine Corps service level exercises, and served as an advisor to Afghan security forces. Still in the Marine Corps Reserves, Chris is a faculty member at National Intelligence University near Washington, D.C. As a civilian, he is a consultant on the policies, ethics, governance, and regulations of artificial intelligence and emerging technologies. He currently resides in Alexandria, Virginia,
An ambitious vet. I just got to tell you, he came in to apply to be a guest on this show, and it's been an honor getting to know this man, just from the inside out. Primarily just from what it takes to, be ambitious and go after something worthy going after. And then striking out, and what do you figure out about yourself? So I'm excited to kind of unpackage his ideas and what he's learned about himself through going through some tough tribulations, but also learning how to win at very big levels. So Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, Chris, happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, brother. Man, it's always good to have another Marine come in here, man, because sometimes you just want to say you want to say cuss words. You want to, just be intense. You don't want to be afraid you're going to scare somebody and all that good stuff, man. So
right.
It's an absolute honor. And man, please fill the gaps inside the introduction and maybe tell the listener a little bit about something that someone doesn't know about you.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you again for letting me be here today. Let's see. One thing that you might not know about me, I'm from Minnesota originally. I'm the second oldest of 9 children. That's it's pretty unique these days. I don't know if any. I think I'm one of the largest families I've ever met. So it's usually either you're either Mormon or you're Catholic, and my family's Catholic. So I'm one of 9 kids. I got 7 sisters and 1 brother.
Wow, 7 sisters and 1 brother.
Yep.
So what does that mean, man? Being raised around 7 sisters.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. That could probably be its own podcast, right? So we'll go down that rabbit hole too far. But interesting thing. I'm the second oldest, and a lot of sisters running around. And I think when you're growing up, talking about sidestepping landmines, I think that's you just gotta sidestep some landmines, right? And stay away from those IEDs. And maybe on another podcast we could talk more about it. But no, I love my family. We're all kind of scattered now. I'm out in Virginia, as you mentioned. Most of my family is back in Minnesota, although I have a couple siblings out in this neck of the woods. And we're all, credit to my mom and dad. I mentioned them in my book, in fact, a credit to them. They're saints in my book. They deserve a high place in heaven for their sacrifice and their selflessness. Was just it's a hard bar to come up to, right? It's a hard bar to cross, the standard that they set. So, yeah.
You nailed it, man. 9 kids. That's a hard bar to shoot for, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive, man. And man, I kind of feel sorry for you, but being one of the oldest, you had some authority, I'm sure. So,
definitely.
So, man, I want to dive into this book, man, because you're kind of going around, you're doing this media tour for the most part while balancing everything else that I've already said inside the bio. And it's a unique idea from lawyer to warrior, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of rhymes. It's kind of like a buzzword, right?
That's why I found it. I was thinking about it on a plane ride. I was like, okay, it was the last step in the whole thing. And I was bouncing different ideas around, and I thought, this one, I think it captures what the story is about in a very succinct and in a bit of a rhyming title. And most people that have read it, or most people that know about the title, like, they love it. So I hope it resonates with others. I hope it's just a catchphrase, right?
Yeah, no, I love it. And it is. Yeah. It's like from lawyer to warrior, right? Like it kind of sticks with you, kind of like one of those jingles, right? Here on commercials. But also, man, I'd love to hear why you wrote this book and also the primary message that you're trying to come across with it.
Yeah, no, thank you. So I'll start with the message first. The message is one of encountering failure and the chaos that rears its ugly head when failure is encountered, resilience, perseverance, and then ultimately deriving meaning from those failures by, in a sense, like connecting the dots of life, so to speak, in those events of life backwards, right? You can only look backwards and kind of look and see where you've come from and derive meaning from those failures and setbacks. So that's the message. And the reason I wrote it was because really my sense of humiliation, my sense of shame, my sense of just uncertainty and thinking about where life was going. Now, I wrote it after the fact, yes, but as I was trying to make sense of these things, I needed writing to help myself do my thinking, is really what happened. And I first put pen to paper on a particular event of graduating infantry officer course in 2008. Probably like the proudest moment of my life. It might be forever the proudest moment of my life. Because it was such an amazing experience with amazing men that I went through training with. But 18 months before that, I was at this nadir in my life, in this trough of shame, humiliation, looking at staggering debt from law school, having failed the bar 2 times in a row, not knowing what I was going to do. Right. So when I first put pen to paper, it was about the magnitude of that graduating from infantry officer course and how special that was. And as I let some friends read it, I had no intention of writing a book at the time, but they said, maybe there's more here. There's a lot here and you seem immensely proud of this, but maybe there's a narrative of the beforehand, what got you there. And maybe there's something about where, afterwards that you could kind of put into an arc of a story. And again, as these complex emotions and thoughts, were running through my mind, I continued to having to put pen to paper to make sense of them. And ultimately, a book came out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, thank God you did do it, right? Because there's so many veterans that kind of go through this process of going after something significant.
Right.
And kind of realizing that they don't have the human capital to actually achieve it yet. Right.
Yeah.
And it's a very devastating experience, me included, man. There were so many things that I went after that I just wasn't cut out for. One is marriage. I got out of the Marine Corps in 2012 to pursue being a family man. Right. 9 years later, I finally met my wife. So
okay. Yeah.
That's just one example, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Listen to this from like your own experience, Ambitious Vet, for you going after something significant. But one of the core concepts that I want to dive into of a couple here is failure, right? Regardless of the type, can have a significant impact on one's soul, man.
Right.
Can you just kind of unpackage that a little bit more, man?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you, and this book is not only for people who have failed the bar exam, and failure is a common denominator among everybody. Like we've all failed, right? But for whatever reason, we're very shy about it. We're not going to broadcast it. We're not going to talk about it. But I failed the bar exam twice. And, to give some context here, I mean, I'd spent 3 years in law school, a lot of work. It's a really tough workload for 3 years. And then after you graduate, you really just double down on that and study for the next 3.5 months, every day, all day. And I didn't pass. And it's devastating because all your friends pass. I was the only one I knew who had failed. And there was so much pent up in the passage of that exam. I was going to embark on a career as an attorney. I was going to, just move to the next chapter, right? Here I was stuck in this place of not an attorney, not a student, and really in this nadir of shame and humiliation. It was one of those things that unfortunately I think had been cultivated in law school, the cutthroat environment of law school. One of the chapters I wrote about it's called Schadenfreude. It means harm joy or shadow joy. And what that means is when you might have a setback or when someone else has a setback, right? And you two are on the same trajectory, that person's setback is to your benefit, right? And that's a dangerous environment to be in and to try and find meaning in because it's such a cutthroat place. And so after 3 years of that environment and comparing myself externally to other people and worrying about where I fell on the spectrum of GPA and status and job prospects, after all that time and effort, you fail an exam of such magnitude, you're really at a loss. You're truly at a loss for like, what am I going to do next? And life kind of unfolds in this chaotic form. I mean, I had over $150,000 of student loan debt to try and think about how am I going to pay for this, right? And so that's what I was looking at. These were like the ideas and the problems that I was confronting as I failed back to back. And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do. I mean, I truly had no idea how I was going to do it because I didn't have the stomach at the time to study for a third time in a row. I've been profligate with my reserves of energy. I expelled them as best I could, in the test, and it just came up empty. And so I wrote all that, right? I kind of was fixated on those things because I'm like, what does this mean? Like, how am I supposed to make sense of this? Right. And at the time, again, this is way back in 2006 and seven. So it took me several years to begin to unpack what that meant and how I kind of thought about it. And another thing I tell people today is that when you do sacrifice so much present day, you give up a social life, you give up doing a lot of things present day for a future payoff, right? Like going to law school, 3 years of hard work, and then you study for passing the bar. That creates an ethic, and that ethic is you hope, let's just call it like the universe, right? The quote universe. You want the universe to cooperate with that work ethic, which is I'm going to do something now for future payoff. And for many people in the world, that works, right? You study for the test, you pass the test, you move on. But what happened to me and what might happen to some of your listeners is that what happens when that doesn't work out? When you just keep meeting dead end after so much sacrifice, right? That was what really cast doubt in my soul about, can I even do anything? Like, what about my own abilities? Can I even trust that I can do the things I want to do? It's a long answer, but that's all the things that are kind of that I confronted when I failed and I really didn't know what I was going to do.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of wisdom there. And Ambitious Vet, I think that anytime someone has a weight to their words, it's usually because they've kind of gone through some stuff. They failed. That's a reason why their words land heavy, is because they have experience behind those. So, Chris, I mean, looking back, I'm sure you're happy you went through the experience on who you've become today, but in that moment, it was probably horrific, man. Experiencing shame and guilt. And I think a lot of vets don't know even how to articulate how they're feeling when they're going through that failure, brother, because we're taught through, specifically in this case, the Marine Corps, to not feel. How do we survive? How do we think? Think our way out of this. And like, we don't know how to process, bro, the shame, that guilt, type feelings, and learn how to even let them go.
Totally. So, and at the time, the thing is, Chris, I didn't need someone to come pat me on the back and pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I didn't need that speech, right? I had all the motivation in the world. I mean, I made it through law school. I'm a hard worker. Like, don't give me that bullshit. What I really needed, what I couldn't find though, what I really needed was someone who had been through this and made it to the other side and said, it's going to be okay. And I can't alleviate your pain, but what I can tell you is that this is all going to make sense someday, right? Or this is all going to help someday. You're going to find meaning in this someday. But no one could do that, right? And so part of this book was like, all right, I'm going to fucking do it myself. I'm going to help other people see what's on the other side of this. And no, it doesn't mean go join the Marine Corps, right? That's what I did, and that happened to help me overcome this. But it does mean when you're confronted with that sadness and that internalization of a humiliation, you got to get outside yourself, and you have to absorb yourself in something greater than yourself. Find a greater purpose to absorb yourself in, and pursue that, and see where life takes you. That's kind of like your life draft amidst this ocean of chaos, is like latch onto something like that, right? And it doesn't. And I also would argue that don't, figure of speech here, but like, don't retreat. Don't move back home with your mom and dad. Don't go back to comfort zone. Don't go back to complacency of like defeatist attitude. Okay, well, it just wasn't meant to be. Like, no, reside in the chaos, but try and attach yourself to something that's going to help you forget about your internalization, right? To help just put it all on the back burner and refocus your mind on something outwardly, right? Externally.
Yeah, no, I love that, brother. I love that. And it's funny because one thing I was just thinking about, and then we'll keep moving on with some high level topics that we want to talk about. But brother, I'm just thinking about like your story is kind of the opposite of most vets, right? They find significance in the Marine Corps or military, and then they get out and trying to seek significance post. Yours was seeking significance before the military, right? striking out, dealing with those emotions of like dealing with significant failure when you're putting, years of your life dedicated to something,
Yeah.
and then finding significance through service. So I think that's just important to kind of point out, brother, because the significant aspect, the acts of
Right.
service, and the values that the military provide you that you can
Right.
build off of, right?
Right. Exactly. And, you know, part of some people were asking me, like, who's your audience, right? Every publisher and people ask you this. So all those who want to write books out there, everyone's going to ask you, so who's your audience? And it was a good question. It's a fair question. Initially, like I said, I wrote this for myself, so I was my first audience member. But as I thought about it more and had some research I had done, I found two. There's at least two. There's probably more. Two gentlemen who, after they failed the bar exam, they committed suicide, and that's a real. Again, that shame and humiliation are real, and it's palpable and it's heavy. Now, I obviously never went that far, but when it happened, I was on that side of the fence. I definitely understood what those guys were going through and that devastation, right? And so as I thought about it, oh, those guys are my audience. Like that's who this book is for, right? Like those people who think they're at a complete dead end and they're in desperate straits and they have no idea how they're going to make it out of it. So did I, right? I was in the same boat, but like you got to reside in the chaos and find something you can kind of latch onto. Like I said, get yourself out of that like selfish, in a sense, narcissism. Just get yourself out of it and absorb yourself in something greater than yourself. Truly, it sounds like cliche, but it could save your life.
I love the idea of residing in chaos. And I love the passion behind what you're saying too, brother. And it's just like, it sounds like you went from the cool boys club of becoming an attorney, right? Status, a lot of money, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah,
To now the bad boy club, which is
yeah, totally.
right. And then kind of to pivot into that, kind of how would you explain to a veteran listening to this of like going from a cool boys club to finding the camaraderie inside the Marine Corps, and how has that supported you as you continue to live out everyday life?
Well, that goes back to that word we talked about before, the shadow joy, right? The harm joy. And when you're in an environment, unfortunately, law school across the board, most law schools cultivate a very selfish, narcissistic environment of I'm going to outwork you, I'm going to outpace you, I'm going to just excel beyond all my peers, right? And it's a very autonomous system. Like it's all down to the individual student. And then after graduation, that's why attorneys are like, I got this. I'm not going to ask for help, and I'm going to do this all by myself. And they can be rather temperamental, all due respect to any attorneys who might be listening, right? However, in the Marine Corps, that kind of ego is going to get people killed, hands down. Like you're going to get Marines killed if you think you're going to do this by yourself, right? Especially as a platoon commander. Like I was a rifle platoon commander, and I came in. Granted, I learned all the book knowledge through infantry officer course, and before that through TBS, right? And those are great schools. They're fantastic schools. But the Marines I commanded had already had combat experience in Iraq or Afghanistan. And so I deferred to them. This is the last thing an attorney would do, right? I think the last thing an attorney would do is defer to external sources or get help to how you're going to do something. Like I deferred to my Marines all the time, right? And like, this is our platoon. We're all going to work together, and you get that buy-in, right? You get them to contribute. You're going to get a better work product. You're going to get them to try harder because now their ass is on the line if something goes wrong, right? It's like if they make a decision and recommendation, they give it to lieutenant. I want them to go see it through, right? They have their tasks, and now we're all kind of in this together. We have all vested interest in seeing this through, and so that esprit de corps is real. It's a real thing, and if you have any kind of ego when you cross the line of departure, Marines are going to die, and that's as simple as that. Marines are going to die, and there's no place for it, right? So that was I try to juxtapose that in my book of the environment of law school and leaving that and then entering into this new world of teamwork, of camaraderie, of helping each other out and no egos, right? And granted, there's egos across the Marine Corps, don't get me wrong. But when push comes to shove, like if you know how to call for fire and I don't, like teach me because my Marines are going to depend on it. If I know how to call for a 9 line and you don't, I'm going to teach you. Right. So like, we're all going to work through this together, because it's going to eventually, we're going to save people's lives. And then most importantly, right? Well, I suppose that's the most important, but also accomplish the mission, you know?
Yeah. No, I love it, man. You go from like, I've got to focus on this task because I'm getting paid good money. I'm trying to build up my individual career status, all that kind of stuff, glitz, glam, all that stuff to, hey, man, like we've got to be a one unit here, you know,
Yeah.
because people's lives depend on it. It's just a completely different culture, right?
Yeah.
So I think it kind of leads us into the next topic, right? Which is, you know, building a life off solid ground, right?
Mhm.
And I think, you know, one of your core topics is around, you know, assessing your motives and asking
Yeah.
yourself what narratives you're living from. I mean, do you
Right.
want to share more about kind of what that idea is there?
Sure. Yeah. And this goes back to, the reasons I went to law school. Um, I, I admit in the very first part of my book, I went to law school for the wrong reasons. Like my motives were not healthy. My motives were financial ascendancy, status, the suburban American life, right? And while those aren't necessarily bad in and of themselves, right? We do need to make a living, and we do want to have uh be proud of what we do. We want to have gratifying work, right? And the American dream is the American dream, and that's all okay, cool. But I I ignored things that were going on in my own soul along the way in in the name of this financial ascendancy, right?
Mm.
And I just kind of immersed myself in this toxic environment, not thinking about what it might be doing to me and my spirit. Um, and so I had to really, when I, again, putting pen to paper, I realized, I was on this, what I've kind of distinguished as like the success narrative versus the excellence narrative, right? And the way I kind of dissected it was like the success narrative is an external perspective, and you're looking in the past. You're kind of comparing yourself to others and what someone else may have done compared to what you may have done in the past, right? So it's external and backward looking.
Mm.
I think an excellence narrative, and I'm willing to debate this if people want to talk about it, but I think an excellence narrative is more, who am I? It's internal focused compared to who I might be, right? What is my potential? And who am I? Am I living up to that potential right now? Right.
Mm.
Focus on excellence. Am I being the best version? I know, again, cliche, best version of who I could be, best version of myself. Right. But if you aren't, I mean, how do I say this? If you're too focused on the external and somebody else, you're always going to come up short. Right. You're just going to come up short, and it's going to be rife with disappointment. And that's when jealousy can come around, greed can creep in. It's just, rife with a lot of negative emotions there. Whereas I think excellence, you know what, who am I today and who do I want to be tomorrow? And am I on that trajectory, regardless of anybody else in my life, regardless of anybody I might be dealing with? It's like, where am I and where do I want to be? And am I pursuing excellence to get there?
Yeah, no, I think that's a completely different way to look at it, right? Because, like,
Yeah.
I think when we're first getting out of the military, we can kind of look at mentors or people in different roles instead of corporations and kind of compare and match and model. And
Mhm.
based on these fallacies, I guess you would say, status, a lot of money, stuff like that. Because let's face it, when we were serving the military, we weren't making all that money, but we had an extreme amount of purpose in our spirit and our
We
heart.
did. Yeah. Yeah. There's a
Yeah.
lot of pride there. And
Yeah.
that resonates, right? And that's why people will serve. And that's why you can't put a price tag on those friendships.
Mm.
You can't put a price tag on what it means to be with your Marines, right? Or your soldiers, sailors and airmen. Like, you can't put a price tag on that. And it's this, extreme, it's an invaluable relationship, right? And you know that this is all an invaluable thing. Um, and when and maybe when you get out, you don't have it anymore and you want to replace it with something, or you're going to try and, I think, pursue something instead of that. And that's what I think a lot of veterans, I can't speak for everybody, but I think a lot of veterans try to recreate that in their life, and they try to find that in the civilian world, and some do and some don't, right? And then on the sad point of this is those who have been in combat, who have had to leave comrades behind, right? Or who have died in the arms of somebody like that's still alive. Like they have to carry that and they have to move forward and they have to try and find that culture that understands them. They have to find that culture that's going to help them heal, right? So there's a lot packed into that sense of meaning and purpose that you get from service that's hard to recreate in the civilian world.
Definitely agree with that. And it's just starting from within and going from there versus outside in, right? And
Right.
it's just a good perspective shift that all of us need to hear, including myself, brother. So, man, this book is great. I love the idea of persevering through failure, finding purpose through failure, that kind of message, because I think that all of us can have a really bad relationship to failure, in other words, man. And
Yeah.
it's kind of emotions, which you've already said, towards it. And
Right.
have us just get stuck, man. And ultimately maybe want to stop someday. So, brother, I just appreciate you using this book writing as a therapy session for yourself, brother.
Yeah, no, I like I said, it was, I just needed my writing to help myself think about these things. And if I can be of service to others who are going through the same thing, it doesn't have to be about the bar exam. It could be a marriage. It could be a loss of a job. It could be a transition that doesn't go well. It could be any number of things, because like I said, failure is a common denominator among all of us. But no one's going to post on Facebook. No one's going to post on Instagram. We're all ashamed of it when it's the thing that's the most common. That's what's so odd, right? Yeah. So if I can be helpful to anybody else that might take this and read it and just have a different perspective, then I hope that's a victory for me, man.
Love it, brother.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ambitious Vet, you can go to lawyertowarrior.com. Again, that's one lawyer to warrior.com. I'll also have the link in the show notes below. Also, I just want to shout this out before I give Chris an opportunity to kind of share his last save rounds for you. Is the first three of y'all that go to the Google form that I'm going to put in the show notes. First ones that you go in there, you fill out one golden grenade that you got that you're going to apply tomorrow. Whenever you're listening to this, that next day after you listen to this episode, I'm going to pay for the price and the shipping for his book, and I'm going to send it to your address. So make sure that you get on that. I really love the idea behind this book. I need to go grab myself a copy still. Definitely balancing a lot of stuff over here, but I'm going to go get a copy over there and figure out how different ways that I can even see myself still falling 12 years out of the Marine Corps, still falling victim to like status, money, all this kind of stuff that kind of has me kind of lose that foundation that I built inside the Marine Corps. Chris, any final save rounds for you, brother, to kind of send Ambitious Vets off to life, living a better one?
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you again for your time. Really appreciate being here. I would just lastly say, you're going to encounter failures. We're all going to encounter failures and setbacks, monumental setbacks. Right. And, I would just offer, like, be patient to all those things that are still unsolved in your life. Don't seek the answers that you can't find right now. Instead, I would challenge you to live into the answer, right? Like, respond to life's questions by answering for your life, right? That's how you can do it. And maybe one day you'll find those answers revealed to you in time, because that's what happened to me. It's a challenge, and it's definitely painful, but you can get there and derive meaning from these things, and there you will find meaning ultimately.
Nice. Chris, brother, thanks for joining the show.
Thank you so much, Chris.
The Ambitious Vet is available on all popular podcast platforms. Go to vettrainingcoaching.com to subscribe, rate, and share with fellow vets.
Ambitious Vet, before you go, make sure you go to ambitiousvetnetwork.com, subscribe to our newsletter. There you're going to get a free copy of our 5x5 goal-setting framework. Incredible framework for you to kind of just think past just SMART goals, right? It's one thing to have SMART goals. It's another to think about the underlining things once you understand SMART goals, like building teams, what are the resources you need, and having a framework to actually understand what that looks like. After that, you're going to get a bi-weekly newsletter that's going to provide you content, updates, news, and also curated tools to fuel your post-life ambitions. As I said at the very beginning of the show, there is going to be a lot of updates and news coming in the next few months. So I want to make sure that you are that person sitting outside the Apple store waiting for that next iPhone come out. It's going to be some exciting news, and I'm excited to keep you in the loop, and that starts by being inside of our newsletter. So look forward to seeing you come closer to the brand, and if you haven't already, and you're not a shy person, go ahead and join the platform. Apply to join the platform. We'd love to have you on the biweekly fire team calls. We'd love to see you engaging inside that platform and growing and advancing with other ambitious vets just like yourself that want to continue to equip themselves to staying unstuck. That's key. So until next time, ambitious vet, hold the vision and trust the process. Take care.